Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to what are we? Brothers of the Arcana. That's what we are. Brothers of the Arcana. I'm Alex Aldea. My co-host
David
Ferrigno.
And Eric Mattson Jr.
Eric Mattson Jr. is our first guest. Astrophysicist, esotericist, and man about town. So thank you so much for joining us, Eric.
Of course.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
It's my honor to be the first guest. I love it.
It's fun. Not that the show is about this per se, but all three of us happen to be Freemasons, which is how we know each other.
We do.
In the oldest fraternity in the world. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Dave, you want to kick us off with
Eric, did you want to just kind of give us a little bio about yourself? Just a little background introduction. You know, those are always fun to do, right?
Absolutely. They're so much fun. Of course. I wouldn't want anything else. So my name's Eric Mattson Jr. I am an astrophysicist. I also have a degree in engineering. I grew up in Bergen County. I went up to Sussex County for high school, went to Pennsylvania, got recruited for football, came back to New Jersey to play football at Rutgers, then went to Rampo, and I am an astrophysicist, like I said earlier, and I helped work on the James Webb Space Telescope, which was very interesting. That was down in Maryland in the Space Goddard Center. The guy that was my handler, his name is Gene, and the man that was in charge of most of it was Dr. Miller. What a great experience and once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, which kind of spurred me on to what I do now. I am for the APS, the American Physical Society, I am their physicist manager, basically. And it's a great organization. We do great things for the younger community coming out of college as, with a bachelor's degree in physics. We make more jobs for them. We advocate for them. We make networking for other physics companies, whether it's medical or science or space science and so on and so forth. So I love this stuff. I also operate a telescope, research-grade telescope, $1 million telescope over in Lyndhurst, New Jersey, open to the public on Wednesdays, which is always great. And I'm always there heading the telescope, and I love having my brothers and everybody else come down and view 2.5 million light years out to the very next galaxy, which is always impressive to see for the first time if you've never seen it. And we're going to get into it tonight, as I was told, and I can't wait. Alex Aldea, one of my closest brothers, and my buddy Ferrigno over here. I'm just so honored to be here, and I thank you again for the opportunity. So
thanks for being here, seriously. We're very lucky to have you, and we know that, and thank you very much for agreeing to come down.
Yeah, we truly appreciate you joining us for our inaugural show, and should be a great one.
Yes. Enough of this.
This is awesome.
Enough of this mutual admiration stuff. Let's get into it. One of the reasons that I love the idea of you being on the show is you're not only an astrophysicist, but you're an esotericist. You are somebody who, I don't know if you buy the Younger Dryas idea. I don't know if you buy the whole ancient apocalypse thing. I know we've talked about it in the past, and I'd love to touch base about it on the show.
We will.
But we've all seen Timothy Hogan together. We've all seen a bunch of other very high-end esoteric, either Freemasons or other folks that are out there talking about some very interesting things about human history. So one of the main things that was brought up was the idea of alien technology. Certain things about that. Would you care to enlighten us? Are there aliens? And if so, where are they, Eric?
So, as you know, working with NASA, I entered into an NDA with them when they asked me to be part of a conference that disclosed quite a bit of information. And so, yes, I can discuss some of what they've already released to the public, which is that there are non-human biological extraterrestrials. So aliens, yes. We have the proof of that. They've exposed that. They also have technology, which back in 2018, I was exposed to called OUTs, OWTs, which are off-world technology. It's an acronym, OUTs. So we do have off-world technology, whether or not it's alien technology or whatnot. that I can't really, disclose, but we do have things that we call specifically outs, off-world technology. We do have biologicals that we've recovered that are non-human. So, I mean, I think that answers the question right there.
I would say so. It's
I
pretty
would definitely say so.
pretty clear on that front.
There's a very cool aspect that I do also get to share that we've discussed before, and that is we are carbon-based life forms, and we have a double helix as our DNA. And so the non-biological or the non-human biologicals that we do have are silicone-based life forms. So the reason we're carbon-based life forms is at the very essence of our DNA, we have carbon bonds in between our nucleotides. And that's why we're carbon-based. Not because it's the most prevalent element in our bodies and whatnot, in our makeup, but because that's what holds our DNA together. And so they are silicone-based. And I would have to leave it to you to speculate what that means and what that would change about a physical body. But being a silicone-based life form is a very interesting fact, and it was a very important sector of the discussion that we had at that conference. And on top of that, they have a triple helix, which is also something I can share with you that I know as a fact as it was disclosed to me, which also is something that you're going to have to speculate on your own. But this is the info that I can give you at least, and I think it's very interesting, and I think there is plenty to go on right there. I mean, there's so much that you can research and hypothesize on what you're thinking about when you hear those terms. And, obviously makes you think, well, are they, much more intelligent than us, much more technologically advanced? And I think that might go without saying.
Probably.
Yeah.
Do they come in peace?
That's a good question. That's a good question. How do I put this? For the most part, I can say. For the most part. For the most part.
For the most part.
For the most part.
There's more. There's more than one type of non-human biological. I'll give you that.
Sure.
I don't want to go any further than that, but that's at least what I could tell you guys. So.
And they're walking amongst us, so to speak, kind of like they live kind of thing.
So everybody thinks like where do they come from? Are they from Pluto? Are they from Mars? Are they from the moon? So we have to revolutionize our way of thinking about it. It's not about where they come from. They're higher dimensional beings. They exist in a dimension that we can't perceive. So let's take a two-dimensional being. Not that there is any or there aren't any, but we have to think of it as a flat piece of paper.
Sure.
They have length and width, right? Length and width, and that's it. And how do we view the world? Length, width, and depth. So we're in a three-dimensional.
Actually, we're in a four-dimensional. I think we talked about this because you also have time, right? So that's,
that is 100% the fourth dimension.
Sure.
Already been proven. That's why we call it space-time, not just space. And so now if we take a piece of paper, length and width, draw a stick figure on it, right? And let's say that is a non-human biological. They can't see anything that is other than length and width. They see lines, they see flat pieces of paper, whatever. Now we, as 3/4 dimensional, we observe the world in 3 dimensions, but we exist in 4 dimensions. And now let's say we take our finger and we touch that piece of paper and then we release it. Now as a 2-dimensional being, all they would see is a small circle get bigger to its full diameter and then get smaller and disappear. And now, if we were to see something like that, what would we call it?
the sun.
What would we call it? A UFO. Something we can't explain.
Oh yeah, sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
So now we know exactly what it is. It's my finger touching a piece of paper and releasing it.
Right.
But as that stick figure on that 2-dimensional plane, it's like I just saw a circle appear out of nowhere, watch it get bigger, watch it get smaller, and then completely vanish from our existence. What the hell was that?
Sure.
So now if we translate that from a two-dimensional plane. Now, we know we're on a three-dimensional plane with the four dimensions, right? Now, take it one step further. Now, fifth-dimensional being or biological or whatever you want to call it interacts with our world, and we see a light pop up in the sky out of nowhere, and it moves in ways that physics can't describe, and then all of a sudden disappears. How do we describe that? And that's the best translation that I can give of stating why it's not where they come from, it's the type of being that they are and the way that they exist. And so we were talking about this on the ride up here. There are ways to raise your consciousness, your frequency, which is very important stuff, 100%, that you might be able to garner the appreciation for it. But it's very hard for us to actually perceive these further dimensions that we know exist now. And yeah.
So would you say these dimensions overlap and interact with our physical world as we know it, and they're always there? Or because there's always been this speculation, maybe some of these interdimensional beings have been traveling through wormholes, or there might be fictional stargates or whatever else that they were able to obviously expand the vastness of the universe, but maybe in their universe, is there actually, the expansion that we know of our foreseeable universe when we look through the telescopes and, we look in space?
It's actually a great question, and I'm going to love clearing it up for you. So these dimensions that we're speaking of all exist in the same universe, 100%.
Okay.
There can be an infinite amount, or there could be like a limited amount. I don't know, something like 12 or something. Not saying that I know, but could be anywhere in between that, or it could just be 4. Who knows? In physics, there is a theory out there that is pretty accurate. And so some of these higher dimensions, they spin off on each other, and they're closed to us. So we can't access them as we know it, as a three-dimensional being, observing 4 dimensions, so on and so forth, that they close on us. It's almost loop, almost like a paradox.
Okay.
And so in physics, that's exactly what it says. And it says that there are levels of dimensions that go higher and higher. We have objects that we can describe in our 3/4 dimensional world, like a tesseract, that we know exists.
Hypercube.
Exactly. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Same thing. And so we know they exist because we can theorize them. And so in theoretical terms, they exist. But to be able to perceive it. So now this is a really cool thing. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, but bubble cymatics.
Yeah.
So bubble cymatics is very cool. They take like a soap bubble or a bubble that you blow off of a stick, and they put a bubble on 2 different speakers, which is sound, frequency, vibration. And then they connect the 2 bubbles. And now you have this plane between sound and our 3-dimensional/4 dimensional world. And when you input a certain sound, you can alter the bubble with a light ring in it. And you can actually observe a 4-dimensional object.
That's interesting.
Yes. Oh, it's absolutely incredible. And I will share the link with you, and hopefully we'll show it up because it's amazing.
Yeah,
It's
we'll definitely.
absolutely incredible. And you can actually observe a 4-dimensional object, which makes no sense. Makes no sense.
But so you touched on this a little bit, and I definitely want to talk about consciousness and frequency because I think that's big. But you touched on the idea of the hypercube and the tesseract. So, and clear this up for me because I thought, or my understanding was that a tesseract is actually the shadow of a hypercube. Hypercube being 5th dimensional, tesseract being 4-dimensional, but we could see the shadow of more high-end things. So we can't travel those dimensions, but we could see the shadows of those dimensions somehow?
So think of it how we describe our world. We can observe 3 dimensions. You can't see time. So it's kind of the same thing. So if you're looking at a 4-dimensional object in a 5th dimensional plane, or you're in a 4th dimensional plane looking at a 5th dimensional object. So there is also a theory in physics that says whatever dimensional or dimension that you have your reality in, you can perceive the above dimension, but can't actually observe it and handle it and so on and so forth.
Would it be fair to say that aging is the shadow of time? Then if you can't see...
100%. It's an echo or a shadow, yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because then it's aging, because at that point it'd be a very subjective thing.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
It's a very good way to describe it and process it. 100%.
Wow.
So from the perspective of, getting back to, you're talking about, obviously if we have the double helix, you're talking about the silicone based. I know there's obviously speculation from an evolutionary perspective. There's the story of the Anunnaki. There's obviously other beings that people believe might have actually created life on Earth.
The Zechariah Sitchin idea of the 12th planet and
Exactly.
Anunnaki.
Emerald
right?
tablet, right? All that stuff. Yeah. So what's interesting about that is, so the one thing that I can tell you is that evolution has one thing that is very hard to describe and explain. And in my opinion, it's why evolution should be looked at as a theory, not as a fact.
Okay.
And so intelligent speech and being able to pronounce words and stuff like that is where the evolution breaks down. So we share quite a bit of our DNA with apes and so on and so forth. And there are very intelligent
And
creatures
pigs
out there.
too, I think, right? Pigs too,
I mean,
for sure.
throughout all the species on Earth, I think we are 95% alike in DNA and our genomes. But that 5% is where everything gets mixed up.
Yeah.
But the one thing that humans have that no other species on this earth, as we know it, have is intelligent speech and writing and stuff like that, right? So we are seeing the first signs of apes and orangutans using herbal medicine and using a tool to fish. And we can teach apes how to do sign language. If there's something in the vocal cords and the larynx that doesn't match up with evolution, 100% does not. Science cannot explain it. I can guarantee you that. You can fact check me and all that stuff. It's the one thing that evolution doesn't explain. And while I believe in evolution, I believe that maybe something had to intervene.
Right.
And what that is, again, I can't really explain, but that is the major factor. There's a big factor there that people need to pay more attention to and look into a little bit better. And there are people out there looking into it. It's just very hard to explain without something or someone intervening.
So that's interesting to say. Is there any possibility, or have they said publicly, let's say, whether the 3-strand DNA of the silicon-based life form and the 2-strand DNA, or the 2-helix DNA of the carbon-based life form, do they share any commonalities at all?
I cannot confirm or deny that, unfortunately.
Okay.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I knew it was coming from you.
It begs the question, right?
100%.
So it definitely
absolutely
does.
should. Absolutely should.
And I don't suppose you know if you raise the consciousness or the frequency enough whether you go to become a silicone-based life form, or that's totally
I can't
something
confirm
different.
or deny that either. Might be a little off, but I can't confirm or deny that. My best suggestion is to try to understand how to do that and try to practice it. There's no harm in it, you know.
So let's just go back for a second. What, in your understanding, is consciousness and frequency and the raising thereof? Let's start there.
Okay, so I'm going to have to talk about it in my own personal feeling. Sure. Consciousness is something that is unexplainable to science. There's no mass to it. And technically, if there's no mass to it, it shouldn't exist type thing. Raising it is definitely, in my opinion, raising your frequency and learning how to control that frequency. Frequency is the key. Frequency and light is the key to everything that is life, universe, realities, dimensions, all that stuff. This is stuff you can look up on your own.
Sure.
Patents on Google, patents that people exist, or that exist, patents that exist, and that some of which actually belong to the Navy Research and Development. And some of these patents talk about light being able to be converted into matter. And so now in physics, there's a very specific property of this where I connected to and understood it. So when you break down into subatomic particles, and you break those subatomic particles down, you get the mass that creates it, but you also get photons of light, which could be a reaction of it in its Higgs field, And so, but what this patent is stating is that you can take those photons of light and reverse the process and create actual matter. And so, as we were taught for the last 150 years, is that matter can't be destroyed nor created.
Right.
But apparently you can. And just from the light shining off of my hand right now, you could take that light and convert it into matter, apparently. And now, to take it even a step further, there's a patent that is cited on this patent that I just told you about that says light, I'm sorry, not light, that we were taught the wrong physics for 150 years. There's a patent on that.
What does that mean?
It's a very good question. That we were fed the wrong information for over 150 years. That the physics they taught us was not right. On top of that, I'm going to take it even a step further into the esoteric side. It says that light is the key to heaven and is also, unfortunately, the key to hell. And there's a patent on that as well.
There's a patent on light as a concept?
Light being
To
the
both
key
heaven
to
and hell.
and the key to hell.
Definitely have to look that up.
How wild is that?
So I definitely want to look that, and we'll try to provide these patents as best as we can, assuming we can find them all.
I'll share the links with you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
It's open to the public. Anybody can look
We'll
it up.
definitely share that.
That's something I can definitely share. That's something I found on my own.
But we know from Freemasonry to some extent, and this is something that's been discussed openly. It's not a secret of any kind. Is that Masons are on the search for more light. But if you're positing what you're saying, that's a double-edged sword. Very much so.
That's exactly what that last patent that I just told you about is. Exactly. So you have to be particularly careful in what you play around with, because if you have the key to both heaven and hell, you can't just give that to anybody, right? And you can't just experiment on your own with it.
Sure.
You need to really, really look into it, dig deep, and understand what you're playing with. There are things at play that you can't even imagine. You can't even imagine, man. We've had that discussion too. And it gets very serious when you get really deep into that particular, I don't want to call it a rabbit hole, but I have to. And that rabbit hole can get very deep.
So I just want to say right now, based on the many conversations we've had, you've been very careful, and we certainly haven't pushed for you to say anything that you shouldn't be saying.
Of course not.
Right. So clearly, you're within you're within your NDA completely.
100%.
Just want to say for the record, but even the stuff you can say is mind blowing. So yeah.
100%. And that's the thing, I love that you guys respect that. You don't push me further than I can go. And that, that's a huge reason why we're so close and why I'm here. And I think it's great for it to get out there because, again, most of the knowledge that I'm providing you guys has already been given out. But a lot of people don't know this. A lot of people don't pay attention to this.
Right.
And that's an important fact, too. I mean, do your research. Go dig deep. Look up the crazy conspiracy theories. That's fine. Doesn't matter. Because, most of them are crazy conspiracy theories.
Sure.
But there are some things out there that line up with a lot of the stuff that I've been taught and my knowledge has provided me with. And the stuff that I've been through with NASA is just, it's jaw-dropping. And again, when you think of silicone-based life forms, what does that mean? Do your research. Because it's more intriguing than even what your imagination can imagine.
So then, if light, obviously, the direction you're going in there, does that also tie into then dark matter and also the exotic particles?
So I have a very interesting theory on that. I've actually been working on it. I'm getting very close to it. So I believe dark matter is gravity traveling faster than the speed of light, which we know exists.
So, dark matter or what
gravity
exists?
Traveling faster than the speed
of light exists.
And so in the special theory of relativity and the theory of relativity, the universal speed limit is the speed of light. Nothing can go faster. But we already know that's not true. We have black holes. So what is a black hole, right? So a black hole is space-time collapsing in on itself faster than the speed of light, which is why light cannot escape it once it enters.
Right.
Because gravity is dropping or collapsing in on itself faster than light can travel. So we already know that something exists that moves faster than the speed of light. So now if we take it one step further, okay, so now we know something exists that's faster than the speed of light. And as we know, the electromagnetic field all runs on the speed of light.
Okay.
Gravity and theoretical particles called gravitons, which are the theoretical particles that exist on the gravity plane, they only travel at the speed of light. So let's say we made the sun disappear right this second. So it's 93 million miles away. And it just disappeared right now. We'd have light for 8 minutes. We'd have its gravity for 8 minutes. And we wouldn't know that it disappeared for 8 minutes. That is a wild thing to think about. Like imagine, like you turn a light on, you see it turn on. But there is a speed there. There is a delay there. And if you could actually break it down and watch the speed of it, you could see somebody flip the switch and you would actually wait to watch the light bulb turn on. So now we take it a step further. Now we take the black hole. Gravity collapsing in on itself faster than the speed of light. What does that mean? Why is gravity moving faster than the speed of light? As far as the theory of relativity and physics as we know it, gravity should not, even its field, whether the theoretical particles exist or not, should not be moving faster than the speed of light. But it does. And so a very interesting theory that I was taught, when you enter the event horizon of a black hole, that's the place of no return as we know it in physics. When you enter that, space-time inverts. So space acts like time, and time acts like space. Basically, the world of physics breaks down, as far as we know it. But we also know that the world of physics breaks down on the quantum level, because quantum entanglement exists, which we've actually sent and transmitted information from the moon to Earth through quantum entanglement instantaneously.
Right.
So that's just for the folks that may not know, right? So quantum entanglement is there's two...
You're very well versed in this. Yep.
Two things in space, whether they're atoms or whatever they may be, that when one rotates, the other one rotates instantaneously, irrespective of time and distance.
Yep. So let's take it from a star, right? So in the middle of the sun, we know fission is occurring, right? Or fusion is occurring. Right. And so when fusion occurs, it creates two particles. These particles are paired for their life, right? And now they exit the sun in, let's say, photons or particles of hydrogen or whatever it is. And one stays very close into the gravity of the sun, and the other one travels to the universe. And it goes all the way to the other end of the universe. It goes past Pluto, past Andromeda, past Triangulum, all of it. And goes all the way to the end of the universe.
Past Triangulum? What's Triangulum?
Oh, so that's the second closest galaxy to ours.
Okay, got it.
Got it.
Anyways, you get to the end of the universe, and now let's say the one that was closest to the sun finally escapes the gravity of the sun, and it spins downward. Instantaneously, all the way on the other end of the universe where that other particle is, it instantaneously knows to spin upward. Do the exact opposite, a reaction. Kind of like Newton's thing, or the law of thermodynamics, or whatever you want to call it, is equal and opposite reaction.
Right.
So when this particle leaves the gravity and starts spinning forward, the one that's all the way on the other end of the universe that escaped the gravity long, long ago knows instantaneously to spin the other way. So this is practical in communications. It's practical in video feed from Mars to us and so on and so forth, which is why it's so captivating, right? And so they did actually prove this. They took the first picture of quantum entanglement a few years back. And now a few years back, they also transmitted information from the moon to the Earth instantaneously through quantum entanglement. It's a very, very, very cool technology that will be invaluable to us in the future. As I've told you, they drip feed us what we need to know when we need to know.
It's very interesting that that's the case.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Again, as we spoke on the ride up here, it's great to know the things that I've been exposed to and have the knowledge of. It's a double-edged sword, right? It's a love and hate relationship. So I love knowing what I know, but I also hate knowing what I know. And I wouldn't suggest anybody to knowing what I know all at once, so which is why I kind of understand the whole conception of them drip feeding. But there's more that they should give us.
Well, I want you to, if you don't mind, talk a little bit, and I know it's not a comfortable subject to talk about, but Talk about some of the issues that you've had with this knowledge, the burden of this knowledge, so to speak.
So yeah, it's a great question. As you know, I don't like talking about it because ever since the conference I had while I was working on the James Webb Space Telescope in Maryland, nightmares almost every day. There's some really scary knowledge that, like I said, it's beyond anything that your imagination can perceive or conceive. It doesn't matter. There's some stuff out there that we are not ready to understand. And unfortunately, I had the privilege and curse of understanding it and being exposed to it. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I do like my drinks. This helps.
I understand
this
that.
helps with the nightmares, I can say, is the most part. But it is. It's very overwhelming. And as a physicist and knowing the background of the universe, and especially all the things that we can explain, a lot of it doesn't make sense. And a lot of it is a scary facts, at least as they were presented to me. Mm-hmm. We've also had this conversation where it could be misinformation that they spread to the heads of the fields, right? And like, go put this information out there if you don't want to follow your NDA. But they made us sign an NDA, and I take that very seriously, especially in my career and in my field. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I want to be successful in my field. And with playing with gravity moving faster than the speed of light, I'm hoping to maybe earn a Nobel Peace Prize one day, or Nobel Prize in physics, because I'm so close to. I'm so close. But eventually, if that ever happens, that's great. Mm-hmm. So I take all this very seriously. And unfortunately, I can't tell you guys everything that I do want to tell you, but it is so captivating. It is so interesting. And that's the love part of the relationship. The hate part of the relationship comes from the knowledge that you guys don't have that I do, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And so, honestly, that's why I understand why they drip feed it. There's only certain people that are prepared to be able to handle that type of level of information. And the power that it contains and the things that it can do. Just the information. I'm not saying the beings or anything like that. I'm just the information alone is such a powerful thing. The dynamic is unknown to us because we don't understand it because we've never been exposed to anything like that. Mm-hmm. You know, like the wildest conspiracy theories or the craziest things you can think of. It doesn't even touch on it. Doesn't even touch on it.
So, on consciousness and frequency, you said that folks could potentially raise their consciousness and the frequency. Obviously, all religions, all meditative practices out there, even things like Freemasonry and other societies that exist out there, whether it's Golden Dawn, not that I'm equating those two things, but there are out there, Rosicrucianism, other such societies that exist. They all have their own prescribed paths for doing just that. Right, raising it. Is there a sort of a white paper idea of like what's the best way to raise your consciousness or raise your frequency? From an astrophysicist who's also an esotericist.
So I would definitely say meditation is the largest and most important step. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to come to terms with meditation for a physicist like myself. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to detach from reality as we know it for anybody. Mm-hmm. So we also had this conversation earlier where how are you a physicist and still believe in a higher power? Mm-hmm. I won't say any other names, but higher power. Mm-hmm. And so I understand the world as physics should be able to explain everything in the universe, and it almost does. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. Einstein explained almost the entire universe until it came to the quantum level, which could be viewed as maybe another dimension. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Potentially.
On top of that, he called it, quantum entanglement. He called spooky action at a distance because it made no sense to him. Mm-hmm. He explained almost everything. Sure. You know how impossible that is? He was a freaking genius.
That's why it's called relativity, because it's relative to everything else, right?
See, it's like the integral of the reality you live in type thing. I forget the exact definition. Regardless, it has to do with the parameters of what you're viewing and living in. So like when you're on a train, moving on a train, and you see two lightning bolts crash down, the only way you see it hit one at a time is if you're not on the train. If you're on the train because you're traveling at a speed relative to the frame of reference, that's what it is. Sorry. So it's relativity is the frame of reference. So if you're in the same frame of reference as me, or so on and so forth, everything should be the same, and that's true. So but when you get onto the frame of reference, as far as quantum level, nothing is the same. It's wild. It's wild. Things and subatomic particles, they blink in and out of existence in microseconds that we can't. And some people say that we blink it out of existence in microseconds that are unperceivable. But it happens literally all the time. And now we have proof of it. We have the collider in Geneva.
CERN.
Yep. And they watch these things happen when they collide these particles at 99% the speed of light. And they watch these particles blink in and out of existence. That's how we found the God particle, or the Higgs boson, or what really is the Higgs field. It's the very essence of all matter in the universe as we know it, which is beautiful. But there are theoretical particles that can only exist when they're traveling faster than the speed of light. Those are called tachyons. What's that Will Ferrell movie where he goes to the Land of Lost?
Oh,
There is actually some science in that movie. I know it's very comedic and fun and everything, but there is actually some science in that. So tachyons are theoretically existent particles because they are theoretically proven to exist. But they only exist when they're traveling faster than the speed of light. And we can't see anything that moves faster than the speed of light because as far as we know, only the speed of light.
right.
So how would it travel faster than the speed of light?
That's interesting.
A higher dimension, maybe?
Now you said
That we
gravity. You said gravity. You said something about the field of gravity. Does that mean the gravity is within its own dimension?
So, okay, so we have the strong and weak nuclear force. We have the electromagnetic, right? And so gravity is the reason we still call the Big Bang Theory. Because it does not explain where gravity came from. And it can't, and it never will. In my opinion, it never will. Never will. Gravity cannot be explained from the Big Bang Theory as we know it as of now. It explains where, nuclear, electromagnetic, all that stuff came from, magnetism. We know where all that came from. And it still can't explain gravity. No matter how thorough you get into the Big Bang Theory, no matter how much you use to explain it, it does not explain where gravity came from. Gravity, as Einstein defined it, is the curvature of space-time, which is usually due to mass. But now, the only correlation that gravity has with our reality is, yes, it keeps us stuck to this planet. It keeps the planets revolving around the sun and so on and so forth as you get bigger. But there is one thing that can alter time, and that's gravity. It's the only thing that can actually alter time. Now, you can alter your perception of time by using time dilation, by traveling at the speed of light with mass, which again is taught to us to be impossible because if you have any mass at all, even if it's the smallest amount of mass possible, muon, whatever, if you take that muon to get it to the speed of light, if it's
What's a muon?
it's a subatomic particle that has mass. It's like the smallest thing next to a photon with mass. Photons have no mass. At least that's the way they tell us. But photons have no mass. So photons can travel at the speed of light. Nothing else can. Because if you had something with mass, it would take infinite energy to make it travel at the speed of light. And another thing I can tell you, I think we've shared this as well, so we already have light speed travel technology. We can travel at the speed of light.
So then this gets into some interesting stuff, why you have some issue with Elon Musk. And that is, why does he still push for combustible drives when we already have propulsionless drives?
Yeah, so we don't have propulsionless drives. There are higher powers in our governments and stuff that have it that have not released to the public, although
there are patents for it.
For these things out there, which I have gone through vigorously and extremely minute details, and it all checks out. So the only reason I can explain why Elon Musk does what he does is because he's almost like a government lackey, or he's in it for the wrong reasons. And I don't want to go too much onto him because
No.
good for him.
No, yeah.
Do your thing, man. I have no problem with that. It's just I'm not a huge fan because I can literally go to Home Depot and make a little triangular craft and float it up and propel it at the speed of light if I wanted to right now. I mean,
Following patents that are already out there.
they're already out there. Yep. That's the reason I can share it with you. And it exists. I mean, most people look at those, everybody has a UFO. It's a black triangle with no sound and travels fast and doesn't even hum and this, that, and the other.
Takes a right angle in space and things
It does
of that
all these
nature.
crazy maneuvers. It doesn't obey the laws of physics. Yeah, that's us. We have that technology. I have witnessed a UFO event once in my entire life. Once. It was out in Annville, Pennsylvania on Route 81. On my way back from a music festival, which was awesome. And yeah, there's a black triangle. I didn't actually see the black triangle. The person I was with who was driving seen it, drive over us and flipped out. And like, what is that? That was a black triangle. So I stuck my head out the window and I looked back. And like a mile and a half back, there's a black flying thing. And it had its belly turned up to me. And it had flashing sequential red lights on the bottom side of it. And I was like, I don't know if that was a triangle, but I can't explain it. Like, and at this point, like, I should be able to explain anything that's in the air. I really should.
Sure.
And so if you see something that's in the air, and as a physicist or an astronaut, I can't explain it, especially as an engineer as well. I have a degree in engineering. I couldn't explain it. It made no sense to me. And I actually had a 5-second film on it, and this is weird too. So I took this was a few years back, so I had like a little digital camera. It was plugged into the car lighter. And so I was taking a picture of the UFO that I saw, which are the lights coming out of the sky out of nowhere. And I start filming it. 5 seconds go by, and it dies. I can't get it back on. And I have it plugged in. Can't get it back on, can't get it back on. So years later, I didn't know much about this now, but years later, I did my research. I'm like, is there a military base out there or something? Sure enough, there's a Navy research and development base out there. Yep. And so it was very, very casual for them, but very freaky for me. This was even before I did my stint at NASA for the James Webb Space Telescope. So it was really cool to kind of put two and two together years later.
Sure.
And it totally made sense. And then the physics makes sense. And so at least, maybe not the physics that all of us were taught for the last 150 years, but if you do your research and you really dig down deep and you go into yes, you're going to go into some dead ends. And yes, you're going to find some information that's very exciting, but most likely probably isn't it. But there are some things out there that you can find on your own without having to sign an NDA to learn about,
Sure.
which is a big thing with the patents. And once I found the TR3B Black Manta and the patents on that, then I started digging. And that's when I started finding some of the things about light and this, that, and the other. So inside the patent of the TR3B Black Manta, or triangular spacecraft, as the patent calls it, there's a patent in there that says...
And we'll put that up too. So people
Oh,
can
absolutely.
see,
Yeah,
right.
it'd be great. The patent in there says that if you read through it enough, there's a portion of it that says this needs to be patented and it needs to be governed by law, because part of the actual spacecraft, they have gravity emitters, which is what allows you to travel at the speed of light. It controls the gravity field in which you are in. And so...
So it nullifies gravity, basically,
Pretty much,
in essence?
exactly. So if you were to take these gravity emitters, this is why I tell people not to be worried about a comet ever hitting Earth. You never have to worry about it again. So if you take these gravity emitters and you put it at each pole of the cardinal directions of a planetary body, or a planetoid, which is better described as a comet or a body in space floating around. Planetary body would be, mostly spherical. A planetoid is something that is kind of spherical, but it isn't. It's rough shaped, right?
Like the moon?
Well, the moon is pretty spherical.
Okay.
I'm talking about like asteroids and meteors and comets out there.
Got it.
If you take one of these devices and you put it at the north, south, east, and west poles, for lack of a better term for now, and you turn the gravity emitters on and you shoot gravity at the same frequency at each one of these devices at the same time, total annihilation of the planetoid body or the planetary body or the planetoid. Turns it into dust. You don't have to worry about small parts. You don't have to worry about it breaking up. None of it.
Planet 9.
You mean Pluto?
No, the one that used to be between
Planet X or Nibiru or whatever.
Right, it used to be right between Saturn and Jupiter, I think.
Oh, the one that made the asteroid field.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I'm not very well versed in that, but that is a large theory at hand right now. I wouldn't say even right now, because I remember reading books about it when I was in elementary school.
Yeah. Well,
The
Robert
gentleman-
Anton Wilson, all
Yep.
of those series and everything, and of course Zechariah Sitchin, like we were talking about before.
Yeah, I think the more interesting fact is I think there were planetary bodies that did exist. Some people say that there is proof of a planet even bigger than Jupiter out closer to the Oort belt, which is the furthest reach of our sun's gravity, the Kuiper belt or whatever you want, or the Oort cloud or the Kuiper belt. And because it's so far away and because it's rotating and moving constantly, they see the effects of this large body or Planet 9, Planet X, whatever you want to call it, of the things around it moving with something that should have a large gravitational pull, but we haven't yet to identify. And so a lot of people think like that's all BS and this, that, and the other, but you have to remember how vast and large space is. Yes, the universe is absolutely astronomically and unimaginably massive. And I believe in Einstein's first theory of the steady static universe, which means it's always been here, it always will be here, period. I know about the expanding thing and all that. I mean, that's up to whoever else, whether I know or not. But I don't think there was a Big Bang. I don't agree with it at all. I don't believe in that theory. I don't think it's right.
I don't know about the Big Bang, but Dave, you got a big canoe over there. Hit up your.
So do I. Look,
hit
mine's
up
getting
your.
there.
Gotta light that up.
Smoke responsibly, sir.
Gotta complain to Jonathan Drew over here.
That's right.
One question circling back on the speed of light. I think if I remember correctly, I had read that a photon traveling at the speed of light, essentially, time basically stands still as it's traveling.
So now we're getting into time dilation, yeah. It's kind of what it is.
Does that only apply to photons, or does that also apply to anything traveling at the speed of light?
So there's a theory out there called time dilation.
Okay.
So again, if you were going to take anything with mass and travel it at the speed of light, you would need infinite energy, or at least that's the way we've been taught for 150 years. So the really cool thing about that is, so if you take you and we make an exact clone of you, this is the time dilation paradox.
Two Daves. Oof.
That would be rough.
That would be rough.
Nobody wants that.
So
Okay.
we clone you perfectly. You have a watch on. Your clone has the same watch on. You guys sync your watches together. And now, let's say you or your clone gets put on a rocket ship, and you stay on Earth. And the person on the rocket ship takes off at the speed of light. Not that we can do that right now, right? Or anything like that, but okay, now we can do it, right? So let's say you do it.
Sure.
You stay here. He takes off for 6 months, stops at 6 months, turns around, comes back for 6 months at the speed of light, comes back to Earth. Who's older? Look at your watch. Whose watch? Is your watch ahead of time? Is his watch ahead of time? Is your watch below? Is his watch before?
I mean, I would imagine his watch would probably be behind.
You would think, right? He's traveling the speed of light.
Yeah.
Nope.
It would be synchronized.
It'd be exactly the same.
Interesting.
So now another really cool theory about physics is what Einstein said. So now let's say we take the exact clock that he has on his wrist and we put it on the outside of the spaceship. And you take a telescope and you watch it while he's traveling at the speed of light. 6 months there, 6 months back. And you're watching the clock on the outside of the spaceship traveling at the speed of light. Now which watch is faster or slower?
I would imagine the watch on the spaceship isn't moving.
It's
Or slowly.
this is the thing. Fast moving clocks tick slow. It's
Got it.
Einstein's big thing.
Sure.
So you got, even looking at it through a telescope while you're watching your watch is ticking at the exact same pace as that clock on that spaceship. Now, the question begs to differ. When he gets back, who's older, who's younger? You guys the same age.
Good question.
You're long gone, or whoever stayed on Earth is long gone.
Interesting.
Long, long gone. So the thing is when you're traveling at the speed of light as a mass, you perceive time so much slower. So you age incredible amount slower. So it would be, I forget exactly what the ratio is, but you'd be long gone. Light can travel around the world 7 times in a second. That's how fast light is.
So if you could travel faster than the speed of light, then what happens?
That's a great question. That's also a theory. But the really big question is okay, so we're both the same. We leave. Our clocks tick at the same time.
Right.
Now you're on the ship. Let's say you're the one on the ship. And you're traveling at the speed of light. And your clone back at home is watching your clock tick at the same exact pace as yours. Now you look down at your wristwatch. What is your clock doing? Take a guess.
It's just taken away.
Backwards?
No, fast forward.
So is that just like the quantum entanglement on the watch?
So this is something that we call time dilation because we can't. It's a paradox. So if I'm looking at my watch and it's going like, but our watches are ticking at the same time, I'm perceiving time way faster than you are, which means I'm aging a lot less than you are. Think about the Flash. You ever see a Flash episode?
Yeah,
where
sure.
he runs fast, everything slows down around him. But if he was to look at his watch, time would be going. Makes no sense. And so in physics school, when I was in college, I was like, Professor, that makes no sense. It's literally conflicting with itself.
Sure.
He's like, if you said you understood time dilation, I would know for a fact that you don't understand time dilation because it doesn't make any sense and you shouldn't understand it. And that's kind of opened my mind up to a bigger and more thorough theories and ideas because it really doesn't make it. Why is my watch ticking so much faster if when he's watching my watch is going the same? Because I'm traveling at the speed of light, he's not. So everything slows down for me. Everything slows down for me except time.
I've also, from that concept, isn't it like if you're going into a black hole and you actually see like the object on the horizon of that black hole?
The event horizon, yep.
When you're actually watching it, it slows down and almost like becomes much slower, right? Even though it's still moving at the same speed.
So this is a really cool fact. As I told you earlier, so when you get close, so the only thing that alters time is literally gravity. Now, what alters time as you perceive it is your speed relative to everything else in the universe.
Sure.
So if the only thing that can alter time is gravity, right? So the more gravity, the slower time ticks. The less gravity, the faster it ticks. And we already know this because we put an atomic clock on the base of the Earth, like on the equator. We put an atomic clock in a plane and we flew around the Earth. And when we got back, the one that was further away from the Earth ticked faster, and the one that was closer to the Earth ticked slower by literal a microsecond or less. I think it might have even been a nanosecond. But the atomic clock, the way that it measures time is it bounces a photon of light between two mirrors that are a specific distance apart. And the speed that it goes between those two mirrors is a second. That's what an atomic clock does. That's exactly what it does. So they were able to measure it to, I think it was a nanosecond. It might have been 2 or 3 nanoseconds or whatever it was. But that's how they were able to detect that. And so then they sent somebody up on the space station, the ISS, and he would circle himself around the space station so many times, and he was able to basically go into the future from your frame of reference on Earth. Right? So he experienced time faster than we did on Earth.
Sure.
Oh.
That's where a lot of people say time is a construct, right?
Well, I was going to say, there's always been that theory, or thought at least, that time is man-made.
So the measurement of time is man-made.
Okay.
Time exists. Everything has a beginning and an end.
Right.
Everything. I try to have this conversation with Roy all the time. Regardless, time has always been, always will be.
An alpha and an omega.
Yeah, exactly. There's a beginning and an end, which I'm going to get into something really cool that you're going to enjoy after this. But so,
Or we're going to talk about pyramids, my friend.
oh, I hope so. Anyways, everything has a beginning and an end. So let's say we did create time, right? All right. So we created time, and the sun exists now. But we also know one day it's going to supernova. So what is the difference between it being a yellow sun, a red giant, and then a supernova? Just its phases?
A white dwarf, whatever.
Or a white
else.
dwarf, yeah. White dwarf or a brown dwarf or whatever it is, or a black hole, right? What's the difference? We only know that it was young at one point and it's old at another. That is time in its essence, exactly what it is. It's always existed. That's why we call it space-time.
Me too. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's why we call it space-time. I mean, that's just how it is. And time exists. How you measure it is according to your frame of reference, just like the theory of relativity. And yes, we are intelligent and we have intelligent speech and we can create what a second is by bouncing a photon between two mirrors that are a certain distance apart. But now let's say there are creatures out there that are 100 feet tall and they use a 100-foot tall mirror. Their second's going to be a lot longer than our second. So that's where the construct comes from. But time always exists. And so now when you get close to a black hole, you have infinite gravity, right?
Yeah.
So what is the one thing that alters time?
Gravity.
So now as you get to infinite gravity,
I just learned that.
it infinitely impedes on time. So there's a theory out there that as you go to step through the event horizon, if you could, right, time slows down so much and you get to the event horizon, you go to cross it, but because gravity is so immense, it's actually you're about to go through time and backwards. And then you go to step through and you go backwards. And you go step through and you go backward. And you're stuck in a paradox forever.
Okay.
So you actually can't move beyond the event horizon then.
And you can't leave it either.
I was going to
very,
say,
very cool
is
theory.
that where, like, if you actually watch, obviously there's been some TV productions, it's almost like you get trapped in that black hole and everybody's just like floating and
you get trapped in a paradox.
There.
Yeah. You're stepping forward, but you're stepping backwards at the same time
Like
because
the Phantom Zone.
Time is moving forward and backward at the same time. Now, to be able to go past that, you'd have to travel faster than the speed of light. Or if you have mass, you'd have to travel at the speed of light, which takes infinite energy.
So wait, but let's say you had mass, you're in a spaceship of whatever kind, traveling at the speed of light. What happens when you hit the event horizon then?
That's when time and space invert. So now as you go forward, you're going forward through time and space is unfolding around you at all times. It's it blows your mind because it's blown my mind ever since I learned this. But you have to think, so as we walk, we travel through space, but it is space-time, as I told you before. So we are traveling through space, but we're also getting older. So now invert that. How could you explain that? The best way I can explain it, and it's not exactly accurate, but it's very close. If you've seen the movie Interstellar, when he goes into the black hole, and he's traveling through time by touching different strings, but space is moving all around him. It's a very interesting concept. It's so hard to... It blew my mind for years. I couldn't understand how to actually grasp that concept. And I think I'm getting closer to it now, especially with the whole gravity moving faster than the speed of light thing, because to overwhelm that gravity that's moving faster than the speed of light, you would have to take mass one step further than... So to take mass, again, to the speed of light, you need infinite energy. But to go faster than the speed of light, what do you need to do that? Right? Because you have mass. It's a very intriguing concept, and again, the best visualization or understanding that you can ever grasp from it, as far as I know right now, because I'm not a fifth dimensional being or anything, is
sure you're not.
is actually the way they had physicists help write the movie and make it as accurate as possible, and they got it really close. It was very cool to watch that unfold on the movie theater because, yeah, that's really close. It's really close. Like as he travels, he's traveling through time. He's not traveling through space. It gets separated and inverted. It's wild. It's wild. Super wild.
So then, from that perspective, what is your take on wormholes?
So wormholes exist. They're blinking in and out of existence at all times on a quantum level. Everybody thinks that wormholes are black holes. That's not what they are. Wormholes are totally different. Wormholes is the folding of space and being able to step from one part of space to the next part of space, no matter how far it is. It could be infinitely far away, and just being able to take one instance through that, and you're on the other side of the universe. So wormholes are theoretical as well, because as though we know that they are blinking in and out of existence on the quantum level, they are theoretically possible. Now, so now if we can make it bigger, those quantum level wormholes that we know exist. And again, like I said, some theories say that our entire bodies are blinking in and out of existence because we are all made up of quantum particles, no matter how you look at it. They are, combined in bigger elements and bigger atoms and bigger particles. So the quantum level of that is, yes, it's blinking in and out. So when a wormhole occurs, it almost folds space. And so now to be able to control that, it gets into a very detailed physics-based conversation. It's a lot of mathematics that I'm not sure either you guys or even our audience would be able to comprehend. I mean, unless you have knowledge of, advanced mathematics and linear algebra and so on and so forth, there are some very imaginary numbers that come into play. So an imaginary number is like the square root of a negative number, which doesn't exist.
Sure.
So theoretically it's possible, but we could never understand that because there's no such thing as a negative square root.
Well, let's take something that might be more accessible to try to explain that. The whole idea of the Navigators Guild. So we're talking about Frank Herbert's Dune, right? So I don't know if you've seen it, but the book actually I think describes it better than the movies do, but the movie gives you a more visual understanding. They basically have a huge container in space. They bring everything that they want to have travel into that container, and then the navigator does what he does, whatever that may be, folds the space, and then when they pop out, no one's moved from within the container, but the container itself is now located in a different part of space.
So yeah. I mean, that is in layman's terms the best way to kind of understand that. It is a very good explanation and visual of how it happens, because that's what happens. You're moving space. You're not moving yourself. The only thing you move is from one transient to another. So from one plane or from one border to the next. So the power in that comes in folding space. We're not even close to that.
Well, so Bashar, as channeled by Darryl Anka, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Bashar. Darryl Anka is a guy he's like a channel, right?
Okay.
So he channels this interdimensional being called Bashar. You can believe or not believe, irrespective of what that. But
I've learned to believe and not believe nothing and everything. It doesn't matter to me.
Right. So what he says is, you have an object that is here. One of the qualities of that object that is here is its relation to time and space. That is its address, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
So it's particular address at this moment. Now, if I were to move this object here, technically it's now a different object because it has a different address in time and space.
Okay.
It's no longer here.
Yep.
So if you could gauge or understand the two different addresses of that object, you could teleport that object from one place to another.
Okay, fair enough.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a little sense.
Would that make sense in physics?
So it's interesting from that perspective.
No, it's another object.
I'm not getting into conspiracy theories here too much. I don't know if you've recently seen the MH370 video that's been floating around the internet.
Explain maybe. I don't know by that name.
Basically, it was the Malaysia Air flight that disappeared, and nobody knows what happened to. Now,
Is that what they tell everybody?
Yes, of course. That's the narrative anyway. But with that being said, there's video that's stating that the government has the ability to create a wormhole, and you could actually see these objects rotating around the plane on a satellite image, or they're saying it's from a camera. Everybody, like all these scientists, are saying it's completely legitimate. They didn't modify the video. And you actually see the plane, like basically there's like these orbs almost floating around it. And they're claiming that they created a wormhole and warped the plane somewhere else.
All I can say is that I know that our government doesn't have that technology yet.
Fair enough.
So that would be something
I'm not sure the
outside
technology
of...
exists, but I know we don't have it yet.
So
I can't confirm or deny whether we know it exists, but we definitely have not been given anything like that yet.
And I'm guessing there's no patents on that, so...
There's not. And there's a reason for that. And maybe we can discuss that. Not on air.
No. Absolutely. And like we said, we're always very, very careful to only talk about the stuff that we can that's been let out.
Absolutely,
because we're not interested in knocking on doors that aren't meant to open just yet.
And there's no reason for it, because I think enough of this stuff is so interesting and enough of this stuff isn't So again, I can only express what has been said to the public, and a lot of people don't even know that this stuff has been given to the public. That is the crime, in my opinion. Yes, I understand that. Like I said, it kind of makes me understand the drip feed part of it, because there is so much, and there's some things that I can't handle. So I know the larger public definitely is not going to be able to handle, even with my background in physics and everything. And so that's kind of what opened the door to me looking into the research to say, oh, wow, we have been taught the wrong physics for 150 years. That makes sense, especially from what I've learned and so on and so forth. And so that's why I implore people to, you know, and anybody that asks me for the patents that I know of, at least, I share that with them instantaneously, because I can't get in trouble.
Well,
with that.
it's all out there.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it's just a matter of
the want to and the drive and the comprehension as well. So you could put a patent out there and you could put a bunch of physics in there, but unless you know what you're looking at, what you're reading, how to ascertain the information, that's why I think a lot of that information, those patents, are let out there. Because I believe that the wide range of the public never understand it. And they can be like, oh yeah, I found this patent, this, that, and the other. But they're not going to be able to describe the actual physics of it. They're not going to know if it's true or not. And you can get a patent for pretty much whatever you want, as long as it's IP or, you know, if the biggest thing is, can you prove that it works? And so a lot of people won't be able to go through the physics on the TR3 black manta like I did and be able to tell you, no, this all checks out. This is all legit and 100% right. No matter what you want to say, bring another physicist, bring anybody you want in to do this math. I promise, or these physics, I promise you, it's 100% possible, which blew my mind when I found out. It just blew my mind. And I couldn't tell enough people.
Is there anything about extra-dimensional beings that you can talk about in terms of the Greys or other such that, you know, have been talked about since the 70s, really? I mean, in terms of, it wouldn't be anything that I think is monumentally new, but...
So I can't tell you which ones I know to be in existence or not, and what ones we have biological remains from, and so on and so forth. But I can tell you there's more than one.
Is it more than 10?
That I can't tell you.
Is it bigger than a bread box?
That I can't tell you. I can tell you that there's more than one. I can't tell you which ones they are. I can't tell you how many there are. But again, the biggest thing that I can give you as a hint is take your wildest imaginations and throw them out the window, because it's even wilder than that.
Can we switch gears to
Absolutely.
some ancient stuff?
Yeah.
I'd love to ask you about pyramids. I know you do an excellent pyramid presentation,
Appreciate
which
that.
unfortunately I missed. So I'm a total virginal mental space to what you have to say on pyramids. And, you know, like we said, you have your issues or theories about the Younger Dryas idea, or the,
I do.
you know, but the uncovering, let's say, of Göbekli Tepe and the other temples that happen in what I like to still call Asia Minor, rather than, you know, because Turkey is the latest iteration of what that is,
Fair
but
enough,
obviously it's been there much, much longer than the nation of Turkey. So, and it looks like, at least from what we've been able to see, things like Göbekli Tepe existed a long time ago, and they were buried. For whatever reason they were buried, we don't know.
They say that it was buried on purpose.
Buried on purpose, correct. So what are the pyramids? What are their uses, or what were their uses? Are those uses still available to be used today, potentially? And let's just start digging into that a little bit.
That's a great freaking question. I love that question.
I appreciate it. That's why they paid me the big bucks.
There it is. There it is. And as you know, I do a presentation on this, and you know, it's widely coveted, and everybody loves it. So what are you taught throughout your life that the pyramids are?
Burial chambers, usually.
Tombs,
Right.
Tombs for the pharaohs.
Yep.
And just by that shrug of the shoulder, I know you know that that's not true.
Absolutely not.
But that's what we're taught throughout school.
Right.
And where do we find hieroglyphics? In the pyramids, right? That's what we're taught. Right?
And in Karnak and in other places, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's
Luxor.
not widely
And
taught.
The Grand Canyon. And some
Well,
other
possibly,
spots.
right? Possibly. The Smithsonian has something to do with that, right? Anyways, so there's never been a mummy, sarcophagus, a hieroglyphic ever found in any of the 3 Great Pyramids of Giza. Although that's what we're taught. And none of that has ever been found. On top of that, how many sides does a pyramid have?
4.
4. That's not true either. They have 8 sides. They're indented to a 99.98% degree of accuracy. And the only time you can see that is during the summer or winter solstices. Otherwise, if you look at it from an aerial perspective, you can see the indents and that there's 8 sides to the pyramid. And so that's a very interesting thing. There's so much more. This goes into so much depth. So I'm just going to go into it.
Yeah, please.
So how tall is the pyramids? Or the Great Pyramid of Giza, we'll say. It's 481 feet. And if you multiply that by 43,200, you literally get the polar radius of the entire Earth to a 99.7% degree of accuracy. Now you take the perimeter of the base of the pyramid and you multiply that by 43,200. And you get the equatorial circumference of the Earth to a 99.8% degree of accuracy. Now everybody says, well, what's the significance of 43,200?
Right.
So again, 8 sides only can be seen on the
Twice a
winter
year.
and summer, right? How many hours of daylight, how many hours of night do we have on those days?
43,200.
12 of each, 12 hours of each. How many seconds is 12 hours? You said it just before.
43,200.
Yes, it is. Better yet, the GPS location, its actual coordinates, is the same number as the speed of light. Now, latitude and longitude didn't exist when they said the pyramids were built. But for some reason, that number is the speed of light. On top of that, it is the geographical center where the equator meets the prime meridian of the entire Earth.
Wow.
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh, we're not done yet. We're not done yet.
And do they match up with Orion's belt or with that constellation?
So that is another theory, right? Everybody says that.
Right.
Nope. They're 10 degrees off. You'd have to flip one or the other, or flip them around. It doesn't work. But you know when it does work? About 15,000 years ago, which kind of lines up with the Younger Dryas, as you were saying, which I don't believe is the case, but we'll get into that too. So yeah, that's another fact that we were fed that doesn't make sense. So yes, it could have that long ago, and that's before the Ice Age. So yeah, it could have done it that long ago, but then the Egyptians did not build the pyramids, if that's the case, if they wanted to line it up with the Orion's belt. So on top of that, Tesla figured it out.
Nikola Tesla.
Nikola Tesla. Yep. He figured it out. So, and when we go into the pyramids, they're all built on a natural aquifer, right? And from my research so far, from all of the pyramids that I know of, they're all built on natural aquifers, which is very, very intriguing, especially if they were built that long ago, right? Somebody shared the knowledge, or which I'll get into again. So anyways, they're built on a natural aquifer, which makes the internal cavities of the pyramid reverberate at the frequency of the natural frequency of the Earth, which a lot of people like to say is 432 hertz. So that's true. But the inside of the...
What they call it, the Schumann resonance.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people like to believe that. So what it does is actually the frequency inside the pyramid is an F sharp to a T. Acoustic engineers have come in there and said there are musical properties to this actual building, and this is totally 100% true. And so it reverberates at F sharp, which is a 440. But when you take it an octave down, it's 432 to the A. Yep, it's 432. So it is 430. It's the same frequency as the Earth.
So not a full octave, but...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's almost totally in harmony with the Earth, which is very important as we go through it. Then there are a 4 centimeter by 8 centimeter chamber that goes all the way to the end of the pyramid outside to the Queen's chamber, and the same size chamber that goes from the King's chamber to the outside of the pyramid. And when they first started doing tests on it, they found hydrated zinc chloride in one of them, and they found hydrochloric acid in the other. And now when you mix these two substances, what happens? You don't have to mix them. You just add them together. You it creates hydrogen gas. All right? So now we have 6 million stones, something like that, that weigh anywhere between 2 tons and 60 tons or 70 tons or whatever it is. I don't have my presentation in front of me, but whatever it is. And the exterior of it is all made by a limestone, a specific limestone from Tura, which, number one, is 500 miles away. All right? And number two, has a very specific property where there is no magnesium in it, which makes it a great insulator of electricity. And these are the casing stones of the entire pyramid. Right? And these stones were huge. And to carry these stones from Tura to Giza, where the pyramids were built, it's like carrying a 10-ton stone the entire length vertical of Florida. How the hell did they do that?
Right.
Regardless, insulator, right? Great. Now, the interior stones, where most of the weight and most of the footprint comes from, they are rose quartz granite. Right? So, have you ever used a barbecue lighter? Click, 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 click. They use a very specific technology to get the spark the butane out of
flint, I guess. But
you would think, right?
Right.
No, they use something called piezoelectricity. So piezoelectricity is very, very cool. You take a piece of quartz and you compress it on both sides of the piece of metal, and it creates a spark or a charge of electricity. You just got to compress it. That's it. And so now we have 6 million stones of rose quartz, which are 80% quartz, 20% granite. And now you have all this weight and all this mass pushing down on it. Very easy to create a spark of electricity. Then, in the Grand Gallery of the Great Pyramid, there were 27 to 28 resonators, which they have the existence of where they sat. They don't have the actual resonators because they were either looted or whatever, destroyed. And so they had 27 or 28. It's one or the other. It's very close because they can't tell if the last spot where they see the resonator would have sat, they can't tell if that's erosion or actually the resonator. Regardless, that's not very important. So now we have 2 chemicals coming in, creating hydrogen. Now we have all this quartz compressing down and creating a spark. We know hydrogen is extremely flammable, correct? On top of that, we also have it reverberating at a certain frequency. So we have that vibration. Now on the top, before we get to the top, the king's chamber is 5 layers. You have stone, you have wood, you have stone. So it's granite or rose quartz, granite, wood, rose quartz, granite, wood for 5 layers. And now when they went in there for the first time and they looked through those layers, right, it looks like a chimney almost. 3 sides of it are smooth. 1 side is rough. Same side on all of the rough stones. The wood is all smooth, obviously. It's just like hewn down wood or whatever to separate it. And so they got into the king's chamber and they see that 3 sides are smooth and 1 is rough. Does anybody know what a Helmholtz resonator is? All right, so you take a bottle with liquid in it and you blow into it. Boom, boom, that's a Helmholtz resonator.
Okay.
The more liquid you put in it, the different note you have. The less liquid you put in it, the different note you have, right? So that's exactly what the king's chamber was, which is why 1 side was rough. The more stone you have in it, the certain note you have, the less stone you have in it. So what they did is they used the king's chamber to tune this thing to an exact F sharp, to the exact frequency and resonance of the earth.
Wow.
Oh yeah, this is powerful stuff, man.
But wait, I thought the frequency of the Earth was an A.
432.
Right.
So we have a 440 that they measure, but when reduced down to the A is the 432, which is why it's super important. I'm not an acoustic engineer, unfortunately, but acoustic engineers from the research that I've done have explained it this way. So regardless, that's what it is. And so they were able to literally tune it to exactly what they needed. And now they tuned it to a frequency that would have aligned the hydrogen particles to be microwaves in those chambers where the chemicals are poured in, the 4x8. That's the exact size you need to align those hydrogen particles to be microwaves. Great, crazy stuff. Now, the top of the pyramid, right? The whole outside is limestone. So now, let's say we're generating all this for discussion's sake. We're generating all this energy The outside is insulator, and the inside was a conductor, right? You could literally walk up to this gigantic 13-acre, facility that's buzzing literally with energy. And you can literally walk up and touch it and it'd just be vibrating you at the same frequency of the Earth. So now the top of the pyramid, which we can only theorize, but is told in record books that it was made of 24 karat gold, which is even a better conductor of electricity.
Now, this is what used to be called the Pyramidion.
Yes,
correct?
exactly.
Yes.
Very good. Very good. And so, we haven't found those. We haven't ever seen those, so on and so forth. But it's what's told in the history books. And so it's a great conductor. So basically what the pyramids were doing, they were harnessing all this electricity. And they were shooting it up into the ionosphere. And now once they get into the ionosphere, it bounces through the ionosphere because of the densities of our atmosphere and travel as far as it can around the world. So now if you're in the area of where that energy bounces through, all you need is a copper plate capacitor, just a flat copper plate on your roof, drill a hole through it or whatever, attach a copper wire to it, and put it down into the earth at the same frequency that the energy is being produced at, and dig that end of the copper wire into the earth. You have wireless electricity in your entire house. That's it. You just have to come in contact with the frame of that building.
No, I've seen that done with plants, where they've wrapped copper wire around plants and the plants grow better.
Use the rebar to go down. Yep.
So I would think then, since if we follow the idea of the energy is neither created nor destroyed, then that energy that was at that point used even back then, whenever that might be, 15,000 years ago or whenever, that energy is still present in the ionosphere to some extent.
So unless it's utilized.
Yeah, but all of it probably wasn't utilized. And since 15,000 years ago...
Okay, so...
Okay, go ahead.
Here's another thing. So, yes, the Orion's belt lined up 15,000 years ago. And that number keeps coming up. And that's a great number. I believe, this is where my theory comes in. Should I tell you...
Well, the Santorini volcanic explosion happened about 15,000 years ago, right?
So this is where my theory comes in. I believe that the human species existed for at least 100 million years.
Whoa.
Yep.
Okay.
I know, it's crazy, right? But after, I think it's 10,000 or maybe 100,000. I forget exactly what that magnitude of degree. Oh, so before I go into that, Nikola Tesla went and studied the pyramids. And he created his Wardenclyffe Tower from it. Doing the exact, it was built on top of a natural aquifer.
What is a Wardenclyffe Tower? I'm sorry, I don't know.
Really?
No, I don't
Nikola Tesla's idea for wireless electricity in Long Island.
know. Okay.
Montauk.
Uh-huh.
He built this huge tower that was funded by J.G. Wentworth and Edison. And he did exactly what the pyramids did. The one thing that he did that the pyramids, that as far as we knew, let me get into it. He drew these copper and iron rods.
J.G. Wentworth or J.P. Morgan?
J.P. Morgan, that was
Yeah, that's what I thought. J.G. Wentworth is the insurance guy.
Yeah,
right.
exactly. I mean, they were all big back then, but
Sure. Right.
So you put the copper and the iron rods all the way down into the natural aquifer that the Wardenclyffe Tower was built upon,
Okay.
and do everything else that the pyramid did with his tower. And so the big question was, well, where are these poles of iron and copper that are in the aquifer of the pyramids? Right? Because in 2017, they discovered iron and copper rods in the aquifer underneath the pyramids.
In the tunnels that exist down there, correct?
In the aquifer, yep. In the subterranean chamber. They actually found them. And
Which Tim Hogan has been to, and we're going to be talking with him about that when we get him on the show.
I cannot wait. Please, either at least let me come and talk to him before or after.
Oh, we'll definitely be talking to him.
He did a great presentation. He seems like an amazing guy, and I just want to pick his brain.
No, 100%.
Yes.
100%.
And he's shown us slides and the access that he has under the pyramids. And
that's impressive.
he actually spoke to the fact that he felt that there was ancient alien technology under the pyramids that they actually built the pyramids on top of because they didn't actually understand what the stuff was, but they said, you know what, this must be really important, and we're going to just put the pyramids on top of it.
So I think a lot of the discussion that comes from ancient alien technology, I think that comes from ancient human technology that is long lost to history and everything. We find the hammer that was discovered in Southern California that was buried in stone, like it was encased in stone, and it was like 400,000 years old. How does a tool made by humans exist 400,000 years ago when we've only been around for 40,000 years? Yeah.
Right.
Was it a regular hammer, or something special about it?
No, it was a wooden handle with a iron hammer
Yeah.
that was encased in stone that couldn't exist unless it was 400,000 years old. There's another thing where there are these...
Did you have to be true of heart to lift it?
Yeah,
and
right.
Then
Exactly,
get the powers
right?
of Thor?
Thor? Yep.
Yeah, right.
There are these stones that were found in Ecuador. They're river stones. And on them are carved anatomically correct dinosaurs with humans next to them and riding them. And there are so many of these stones that it would have taken the entire population of Ecuador at the time that they say it was made 200,000 or 20,000 years to make every one of those stones because there were so many of them. So my theory, which I was getting to, right? So when did Pangea exist? 100 million years ago. It broke up about 90 million years ago.
Right.
So I think the flood myths that we all have, all the religions and whatnot,
Right.
was the breaking up of Pangea. And so the center of Pangea, or what people might call Atlantis now, and so on and so forth, like the glory of humanity at the time, were at the center of Pangea, which would have been where South America connected. Because if you look at an atlas, you can see that they connected perfect in Pangea, which is why we know Pangea existed. And in the center would have been where the pyramids are and everything else. And I think that that's where society was, the best. And now there's this thing, I'm not sure if you guys, I think you're familiar because we've discussed this. I'm not sure if you are. The Bimini Road.
Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
So we have evidence of the Bimini Road in the Bermuda Triangle. We have evidence on the western shore of Africa and the eastern shore of Africa, and we have it in Alaska or Australia as well. And so a lot of people like to hypothesize that it was a road that went around the entire world,
Sure.
and that's exactly what you should think. But now, if we subject ourselves to believing that humans have been around for 100 or maybe more million years, that's when the entire continent was just one, and all the bodies of land were combined. And now, yes, it might have been a road that went around the entire world, but didn't have to go over ocean. It was all connected.
Right.
Just one road that took you from the western side of Pangea to the eastern side of Pangea. And then when it broke up, now we have remnants of it here, there, and there.
So that's one of the things that goes into the pyramid theories of why there's pyramids in Mexico, pyramids in China, pyramids, because there are pyramids in China. They don't like to talk about those. Antarctica. Well, yeah. And obviously Egypt and other places.
Alaska.
Ireland, they have those mounds and such because apparently they were drawn in a big circle. I mean, I guess if you count Pangea as being connected, then those things make a lot more sense.
That's my theory. Yep. And now you have all these, let's say, electrical antennas stuck up, and you have wireless electricity all across the globe, or at least the globe where you can live.
Now, where did the Arks of the Covenant come into this? Because I understood that they were dynamos, right? So that's your other presentation.
That's my other presentation. I'm trying to get them both combined so we can have them both together because they really do coincide. So the only thing found in any of the three great pyramids of Giza is this big black rose quartz granite box.
I heard basalt granite, but anyway, it's regardless.
So there's this big box in the middle, and they're like, oh, that was a sarcophagus. Oh, yeah? Where's all the hieroglyphics on the outside of it? Where's the lid? Where's the body?
Sure.
So Timothy Hogan will know this. It's not big enough to hold a body. Even if you take into consideration how people were much shorter back then and all that stuff, still not big enough. You know what it is big enough for? Within 2 inches on each side? The Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant, this is my theory alone. I've never heard it from anywhere else. The Ark of the Covenant is dielectric. It had gold on the inside, which is a great conductor of electricity, as we just talked about. Gold on the outside, great conductor of electricity, and the dielectric in the middle, which was
Mono.
acacia wood.
Acacia wood, right, right,
Acacia
right.
wood, but there's also Hogan.
What was
theorized-
inside of it? What was inside of
Hogan
it? I'm
theorized
talking about
that-
the structure
right,
of it.
Sure.
Who cares what was inside it?
Right.
Because I'll get into that too if you want. It's part of my presentation.
Sure.
So now we have two golden cherubs on top with their wings, and the Bible explains exactly how it should be built.
Right.
The wings pointing towards each other, but not touching,
Right.
Creating negative space. That's
like a Jacob's ladder.
Yep.
talk more about that. So, what is Jacob's ladder?
With
For
the arc of
those
electricity.
that don't know.
Yeah. So,
Right.
so Jacob's ladder is where you have two great conductors of electricity. You push electricity into the bottom of them, and you get this arc of electricity following from the bottom up to the top. So now let's talk about biblical times.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, let's say I think they charged the Ark of the Covenant in the pyramids and took it around the world and showed everybody the miracle that they found and taught them, listen, you build pyramids like this, you put a box like this in the middle of it, you could charge it, and you have wireless electricity no matter where you go. Like, let's say, I don't know, the Jews had to go into the desert for so long. How'd they survive for 40 years? Well, they had a box that provided them unlimited electricity, right? Like, you could produce whatever you want as long as you have energy. On top of that, how would you produce electricity if you weren't charging in the pyramids? Now, as Masons were taught, but we'll put that aside. In the Bible, it says what was inside of the ark. 10 Commandments.
Right.
10 Commandments written, chiseled in on stone, right? Aaron's rod and like manna or incense or whatever it was. So now, where did the 10 Commandments come from?
Top of Mount Sinai.
From
God.
to,
To Moses.
there we go.
Through the burning bush.
So
Right.
in that area, it is a very prominent element, which is radioactive.
Okay.
Uranium, plutonium, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So now let's say the tablets were uranium or were plutonium.
I think plutonium is a byproduct of uranium.
Oh,
isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah, exactly. So if you put those stones in something that can conduct electricity, now you have a nuclear reactor at your helm. And you just carry it around. Literally. Which is why, again, in my Ark of the Covenant presentation, it talks about the Levite priests that had to wear these things that were almost like, I don't know, lead aprons, as if you were going to get an x-ray.
Sure.
Right? And Uzzah, who got struck down, which sounds like he was struck down by a strike of lightning or radiation or whatever. He went to, so one of the Levite priests went to drop it, and he went to catch it. And he didn't touch the rod. He actually tried to catch the ark, and he was zapped down dead, which sounds like to me something that would have happened if you were to go to touch a freaking nuclear reactor. And so if you look, again, this is in my Ark of the Covenant presentation, where the ark was. When the ark was taken from the Hebrews by the Philistines took it back, right?
No, the Babylonians. Nebuzaradan was the guy who destroyed the temple for
I'm
Nebuchadnezzar.
talking before that. It was the Philistines against the Hebrews.
Well, during the Battle of Jericho, I know that
Well,
obviously they
they
used the
broke
ark
the
to
walls
destroy
down,
the right.
So now if you have a nuclear reactor, you can do that with sound waves. They also said that it used to fly ahead of them and tell them of all their dangers. It used to say that it could communicate with God. And so you can take that nuclear power and whatnot, and you can translate it into radio waves where you can communicate with people. You can turn it into a vaporizer to part the Red Sea. You can literally vaporize water with nuclear energy. Absolutely.
And you would imagine that if they took these from the Egyptians at the time, the Egyptians wouldn't have been too happy about it and would have tried to follow them and get it back, which would explain the story of the Exodus
There
on a
you
certain
go.
level.
There you go.
But Hogan posits, or at least he's pretty clear on it, that he's seen more than one of these that still exist.
Yeah,
so
10,
apparently
I think he said.
10 or 15.
And they have 7.
Where they have something like, where it's not just one. It was maybe, okay, the Hebrews had one, but others abounded.
So
let's
while
say,
I'm
right?
not sure I agree with it, it does kind of lead into my theory where they took it in the first place and traveled around the world to show everybody what it was, and then they made their own. So while I do agree and disagree with him, I need to talk to him because
Well,
a lot of
definitely.
our stuff line up, but I need to get that clarity because, it's great knowledge. And I think me and him together, I think we can discuss some really cool things. And I think we can really nail it. But he seems like he has the proof for all of it, which is absolutely spectacular. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and it goes without saying, he wasn't insinuating that there was multiple, obviously there was only the 10 Commandments and the one. But he was essentially stating that he believes that there was other portable generators, so to speak.
But one controls the rest.
Right.
Or may not, or they could be independent dynamos that all
So
just
from
do their own
what I
thing.
watched of him, he said that one controls the other 10. I could be misremembering, but
Maybe.
from what I watched, yeah.
There's a master version that was probably
Exactly. And apparently it leads to all the rest. It gives energy to all the rest and so on and so forth. And he's like, at least from what I remember watching, that his group of Knights Templar have 7 of them. And there are 10 that exist. And they know where the other 3 are. They just have not been able to recover them yet.
So that posits that throughout all of this time, none of them have been destroyed.
That is exactly what that posits. Yep.
So which is very interesting considering that pretty much nothing else has survived other than the pyramids. Do you feel, in your opinion, that the pyramids could be brought back online?
So this also goes into my pyramid presentation. So there's evidence of what I think happened was the Egyptians fell upon these things that we call pyramids and whatever, and they tried to replicate the effect. And so this goes into I didn't want to ruin the entire presentation for you, but heck,
It's
whatever
okay.
now, right?
I'll watch it anyway. Don't worry.
Fair enough. So there's this thing they call the SAA, the Southern Atlantic Anomaly. It is the weakest point of our magnetosphere, and it is located in the Southern Atlantic Ocean, in between, guess it, South America and Africa, where the ISS and satellites avoid because the solar radiation hits it so hard that it takes out satellites all the time when you pass over the SAA. And so, a long time ago, the SAA was centered above Giza. And so I posit that at one point they were either aware of it and they built the pyramids to hold it up to protect everything else, or back about 15,000 years ago, there was the mother of all CMEs, coronal mass ejections. There was a solar storm.
Explain what those are, please.
So CME is a coronal mass ejection. It's when the sun releases a huge burst of solar particles and high energy particles that come and hit the Earth and can do some major damage, EMT, all that stuff, or EMP, and obliterate our magnetosphere, expose us to deadly radiation, lots and lots of things.
Basically what happened to Mars.
Yeah, kinda. And so, what I think, this is already proven historically because we can reverse the time back of the sun and everything else that's happened. It was the mother of solar storms ever. There were lightning strikes unlike human existence have ever recorded or seen themselves. Hundreds or even thousands of the strongest lightning strikes you've ever seen in your entire life. And it was all over the world. And I think it was concentrated at Giza because they were producing all this electricity. And so lightning strikes are negative or positive, coming down to hit negative or positive atoms or particles or whatever. And because they were generating so much energy, I would like to think that it was focused there. And it could have created the SAA when it destroyed what the pyramids did. So now the evidence of the destruction of the pyramids as a structure creating free energy, and it would have been unlimited free energy. As much energy as you can consume, you could just keep producing it. All you got to do is pour in some, hydrated zinc chloride and some hydrochloric acid, and that's it. And so when the Egyptians fell upon it, I think they tried to replicate it, and they used not hydrochloric acid, but sulfuric acid. And when you mix that with hydrated zinc chloride, you don't have to stir that. You can get an explosion. It's a...
Thermogenic effect.
Something like that. Yeah. There's another word for it. I'm not a chemist, so I can't remember it. But anyways, I think they tried to replicate it, and now there's evidence of this. So right outside of the king's chamber, it shows scorch marks. And that's unexplainable. And then it shows these huge 70-ton granite blocks pushed out 2 inches, which were on the center of the pyramid. And the amount of energy to push these huge 70-ton stones out would have been immense. And so I posited and I put together the research that I did, which again is totally in my presentation, that either they tried to replicate it and tried to do whatever they thought it could have done, or it was operating and it's been operating for, let's say, 90 million years, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden the CME hit and it was drawn to the electricity in the magnetic or the ionosphere that they were generating, and it hit it and boom. But because of the structure of the pyramid, which is one of the strongest structures known to man, all it did was, like think about putting like a huge metal can over, an M80 or like an air filter over an M80. Sure. The M80 goes off, it blows off the smoke, it might expand it a little bit, and then that's it. So in my presentation, I get into all that, but that's kind of what it sounds like happened. Like the solar storm hit, was concentrated on the pyramid, blew the pyramid out a little bit, messed the whole thing up, because once you start messing with the dimensions of, like, let's say the 4x8 that did the microwave particles of hydrogen perfectly and all that stuff, you mess it all up. So I'm not sure the pyramids can be reimagined and reutilized as what it was one day. But Nikola Tesla, has already proved that we can recreate it if we wanted to. And that's all depending on, Edison was a huge advocator for Nikola Tesla when he worked for him. But then when Nikola Tesla was not okay with what he was doing, because he was basically trying to become lucratively rich over everybody else's need for this new theme of electricity. And Nikola Tesla was ready to give it to everybody for free because we can generate it right from this earth. There's no need to charge anybody. And that's where that big disconnect came from. And, anybody that studies Nikola Tesla or has watched his documentaries will all know this. That's exactly what he was about to do. His work disappeared. His research disappeared. He died, very, very suspiciously. But so I always ask this question to people. If you could go back in time and meet any one person ever to have ever existed, and minus out your family, because obviously you have family members that you've never met or that you only knew for a little bit and you would love to go see. So minus that out. Who's the one person you would go to see? And I get a lot of people say, Jesus Christ.
Right.
I get a lot of people and a lot of brothers that say, somebody like Jacques de Molay or DePaynes or something like that. My answer will always and inevitably always be Nikola Tesla. I need to speak to that man. And that goes into some other theories that we were talking about earlier is time, right? So to time travel, the reason it's so difficult is, okay, yes, you can try to go back to a specific time, but you have to also remember that we are orbiting a sun, which is orbiting a galaxy, which is orbiting through the universe. So not only do you have to get back to that time, you have to get back to the location of the Earth or wherever you want to travel to at that time. So the amount of calculations that go into it it's almost infinite. And this is something that I didn't mention before, but there's this thing called the zone of avoidance. So we live in a galaxy, right? Or let's start at the solar system, right? The solar system has a sun, right? That's the center of our gravity, and we all orbit it like this, right? So everybody thinks we're just going like this. And I'm sure people have seen the diagrams of the solar system traveling around the galaxy, where it's almost like a corkscrew, right? Yeah. And so that's technically what we're doing, yes. Sure. But it even goes one more step. So, yes, the sun is orbiting around our galaxy. And from our frame of reference, it looks super slow. But it's moving incredibly fast. But our galaxy, the black hole at the middle, which every star in our galaxy revolves around, and if you look into the night sky, the only thing you see are the stars in our galaxy, and the furthest thing you can see with the naked eye is the galaxy next to ours. Nothing else. And there's so much more. There is so much more. Anyways, so this
Come
is
on, the Earth is flat and there's a firmament.
Well, of
Everybody
course,
knows that, right?
And the
So
ice wall, that ice wall. You forgot to mention
it's
the ice
turtles all the way down.
Of course.
Absolutely.
wall. So now we
Wait, moon landing? Yes or no?
100%.
Okay.
Definitely landed on the moon.
Okay. All right.
That's not what was hidden from us. There is a secret on that. Yeah.
On the moon?
Yeah.
Can't talk about it.
Nope.
Got it.
But everybody questions the wrong thing. Did we go to the moon or not? Did we go to the moon or not? That's the misinformation that people put out there.
What was the video, the actual video of the movie?
100%.
Okay.
Yep, I know it's hard to believe. I know. But that's why they did that.
Well, just because of the fact that the stream was
That's
like
why they did
basically
that.
a live stream back then.
That's why they did it.
They have a hard time replicating that now. Right?
That's why they do it.
Okay.
You would want to say yes. It doesn't look the same as we seen back in 1969 or whatever, right?
Well, then there's also the theory.
All misinformation to make you believe that the thing you should be paying attention to is we never landed on the moon.
Sure.
Do you ever discuss about what was discussed when they had a radio blackout on the other side of the moon? When they couldn't communicate with Houston and everything else?
Well, and I've also always heard that there's structures on the other side of the moon that were what they describe as an alien outpost, and basically.
How would we know that if we've never been to the moon?
Well, we've been around it, right? So,
Yeah, okay. So even if we've been around it, that kind of dissuades you from believing that we never landed on the moon.
Well, I always found it interesting with the Apollo mission when they said, switch to a secure channel, basically, and they were communicating because they said we're not alone. We're not the only.
One of
people
our
here.
brothers knows it all.
Yep.
Well, he'd probably never say it.
You talking about Buzz?
Yep.
So, what's interesting is Buzz, when he got back, was one of the few guys. I mean, you had Neil Armstrong go into seclusion, never talked about anything, never met with anyone, wanted to completely stay away from everything. Buzz walked out into the world, but he was damaged. I mean, he's alcoholic, drugs, whatever else, to cope with whatever it was. So you got to imagine.
Cheers,
Cheers. Well, yeah, exactly. He saw something. God bless him. That he can't.
The
he
lie
can't
isn't landing on the moon. The lie is something else. That's all.
he can't metabolize whatever it is. So it's
It is. It's curious. So that's what you should be. If you're looking into conspiracy theories about the moon, that's what you should be looking into. Not whether or not we landed on it. Now, they did plan to fake it, 100%, and they used exactly who you thought was supposed to be used to fake it, and they had everything, and they could have done it if they wanted to. They didn't have to because of a specific group of people back in the time. A few of which were women who really helped it along. They were very brilliant women. And I give them total credit for everything that we accomplished. They were very integral in the landing on the moon and the transmitting from the moon. And it's not something that everybody wants to admit, but I have no problem admitting it.
Sure.
I had nothing to do with it. I just go through the facts, and that's it. And so, yeah, the question you should be asking is what they found on the moon. Not whether or not they landed there. That to me is certainty.
So we got a couple of minutes left, but we want to talk about what about the face on Mars and Mars in general. I mean, there's just so much to cover, but
Hey, I can always come back. You know that.
yeah, absolutely.
The face on Mars is a very interesting aspect of the pictures and the photography of NASA. And I love NASA. They hired me as an intern, paid intern nonetheless, which is even better. Looks great on a resume, that's for sure.
Sure.
They alter and fake pictures all the time. That's not something that I learned from them. That's something that I've researched and figured out myself. Now, there's certain things that I know about Mars I can't talk about. There's certain things that I was never told about Mars that I know. So I'm just trying to decipher exactly what I can tell you guys.
Okay, here's something that has, while you're pondering that. So Robert Anton Wilson, all the way back in the 70s and 80s, wrote the Illuminatus trilogy, wrote a bunch of other stuff. He and a bunch of other guys talk about Merkabas as being something to which the Greys used to travel to this Earth. They used to travel to other things, where you could create your own. That's why people sit under pyramids all the time and meditate. The orgone, wands, and other things that people are using that probably access that energy in the ionosphere that's still around. What can you tell us about Merkabas, if anything?
Probably nothing. Tapping into higher dimensions, the way you can travel at higher dimensions, maybe?
Is it a vehicle for traveling?
It could be.
Okay.
And to that point,
Give me a second. Yeah, keep going.
There's been individuals that posited that the Bermuda Triangle was actually a Merkaba that went bad. That whoever came here, like the Martians, if it was the Greys or whoever else, whichever alien race it was, they were actually trying to get off this planet, and they were trying to recreate the Merkaba, but because they had lost some of their consciousness, they couldn't remember how to create it properly, and because of that, within the Bermuda Triangle, they claimed that it was destabilized, and that's why you had all these ships that disappear and everything, all these weird weather phenomenon or whatever else. It was because of that destabilization, and they posit then a lot of these ships just kind of went into another dimension or wherever they were traveling to.
That's like USS Eldridge, where they were trying to teleport a ship, basically.
Right.
Philadelphia experiment. Yeah.
Philadelphia experiment. Right,
exactly.
right.
So that is technology that we gained from somewhere or something else. The Bermuda Triangle is really a misdirection.
But apparently they stabilized the Bermuda Triangle because that phenomenon doesn't occur anymore.
It's a misdirection.
Okay.
So what planes and ships really disappeared there?
Good question.
Military ships and planes?
Yep. Well, what was it? Flight 91 or whatever they called it? It was, those like World War II airplanes that disappeared, and I could be getting the number wrong.
Whatever it is.
Right.
That's the best I can tell you. You guys are on the right page, though. I love that you guys are knowledgeable about it. I would say retain everything that you can find out about it, but really, really dig deep and try to understand at least what I've discussed with you tonight and what we always discuss about, and try to ascertain the reason for everything, right? We're getting drip fed, and we'll always be drip fed. They know so much more that is beyond imagination. It's the truth, unfortunately. And it's hard because you get all this information, and some of it makes a lot of freaking sense, right?
Sure.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
And so when they find those outlets where it's going to make a lot of sense to everybody that's already looking into it, that shit's getting released. Ooh, that stuff is getting released so quickly. I get so passionate about it. Apologies. But that stuff's getting released as soon as they can because, like, oh, that's a great angle to feed to everybody. That's literally what it is. And the Bermuda Triangle, yeah, that was a great mystery for so long.
Right.
When's the last thing you heard about something going missing in the Bermuda Triangle?
Really nothing.
Oh, wait. They stabilized it, right?
Yeah.
That's what they say. Right.
It's interesting. You got to remember, they have the greatest minds working at all this. They have the greatest minds. They do what they have to ensure stability within the human race and their control.
One of the big things on TikTok right now is the raising of consciousness and frequency, and there being 5D people and 3D people, and basically two Earths that are starting to diverge, and two realities, if you want to call it, within the Earth, right? So you won't see the 3D people anymore, or the 5D people will, almost like a rapture of sorts, right? So does that make any sort of sense on your level?
Not really. That's more of misdirection. I know a lot of people like to combine that with CERN and stuff like that. Don't worry about CERN. They're not doing anything that's going to affect our reality or our world. It's another outlet for them to create misinformation. Because a lot of people don't understand what they're doing at CERN. They know that they're colliding particles at 99% the speed of light, because they can't take particles and collide them at the speed of light. But the safe thing about CERN, which I can tell you, is that they're on Earth. And there's gravity on Earth. You're okay. If they build a particle collider in space, then start to worry. Then there's no friction. Then there's no gravity. Then maybe we get to the speed of light with particles.
And what would happen if you collide particles at the speed of light?
That's some scary stuff. That's when we start getting into the things that the misinformation, the conspiracy theories go into. And as of right now, I can tell you that doesn't exist. And there's a reason that doesn't exist, because they know as well as I do that you should not be doing that.
Is that because we'll attract attention from other species and other things?
That's one very small aspect of it. Oh, we never got into the way that we found the 9 human biologicals.
Please get into it. We still have a little bit of time. Sure.
So the first test of the atomic bomb, split an atom, right? When they did that, they shouldn't have done it.
At Los Alamos, or where was it?
Yeah, it was somewhere in New Mexico. I don't know if it was Los Alamos. I forget where it was. I think it was 1945.
The Manhattan experiment, basically.
Basically,
Yeah.
the first time they split the atom.
Manhattan Project. Right.
First time they split the atom. They were afraid that it was going to cause chain reaction, and which is the exact thing that they should have thought, as physics was at that time, and it would have literally annihilated the entire universe. They still decided to do it. This is Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer went to Einstein and said, "Listen, what's your thought on this?" That because the president of the United States went to Einstein prior to Oppenheimer, which is why Oppenheimer got the job, and asked him, because Einstein was the one that first figured out E equals MC squared, and he wouldn't give it to him. He's like, "This is too much power for any man or any government to ever have. You're going to destroy," because Einstein also thought that it was going to be a chain reaction. It was going to destroy the entire universe. No, it's too risky. There's no reason to give it to anybody. You know, the whole nuclear deterrent BS and all that other stuff. No, Einstein was like, "I absolutely know that nobody should have this power. This is beyond, we are messing with God, we're messing with reality, like we should not be doing this." So Oppenheimer used to go to him all the time. And he told me, he's like, I will not do this. I will not do this. I will not give the equation to the president. I will not give it to anybody, because he was that worried about it. Oppenheimer was able to detach from that. He was able to basically eventually figure out what Einstein figured out. Einstein had it first. And I think the last time that Oppenheimer went to Einstein was very disappointed with him. He's like, "You're going to soon find out that what you're about to allude to is going to be a big mistake." And so when we set off the first test for an atomic bomb, the first time we split an atom, as we've discussed, the non-human biologicals that we do have, when we split the atom and the radiation, everything else that happened, which I have another cool story for that. On top of that, it messed with the biologicals that we do have and their instruments and their stuff that made them crash land here, because it took them out of the higher dimension plane that they exist in. And so, again, think about it this way. Stick figure, us. We can exist in a two-dimensional plane. We can interact with the two-dimensional plane, but we exist in our plane. So they can always interact with us. But when we broke their stuff, they ended up collapsing into our existence. And so once they collapsed into our existence, that's when whoever found them got their hands on them. And that's when that's why we see technology advancing at such a quicker, rapid pace, right? So in the last 100 years, technology has advanced so much quicker than in the last 500,000 years, 40,000 years. It doesn't matter. We're however far you want to go back until the pyramids, really, because everybody has stopped that from being a new technology for us. But it hasn't advanced like that ever. And then all of a sudden, you see right around when we split the atom, where technology took off at almost the speed of light as a joke, but it's serious, and that's where our first interactions came from.
Oh.
So while there might have been interactions prior to that in medieval times, 1,000 years ago, whatever it was, they only looked at it as, oh, look, there's a small circle, big circle, small circle, disappeared. And that might have been, a silicone-based life form looking at us as, I don't know, lab rats or whatever.
Tell your story real quick.
What was it about?
The aliens, the crash landing, the atomic experiments. You said you had a cool story about it.
I know which specific part. Why can't I remember?
Taking the technology, the new use of technology, all of that kind of stuff.
So one of the main things that I implore everybody to go look into is the Arecibo answer. So do you guys know what? I'll explain it for the viewers if you guys don't even know. It don't matter. Back when the Arecibo telescope was created, it's a radio telescope.
Yep.
We sent out a message, which would take 50,000 years to get to who we were trying to contact. And I think it was like 2 weeks later, we got an answer. They utilize a different type of, I want to say satellite, because that's the best way I can describe it, to interact with not just space-time, but different dimensions. And so they answered us right away. And we sent out a radio signal that was put out into binary, which, as processed, would show you an image.
Sure.
And the image would show you our population, what we look like, our DNA strand, the third rock from the sun, and show us our entire solar system, which included Pluto at the time, by the way, so that's great. And again, 2 weeks later, we get this response, which is in binary. And when processed into a picture, is the exact same grid as what we sent out. And so this grid that came back showed us that they had 22 trillion or 22 billion people, something like that. And they inhabited 2 planets out of their system. And so I want to call it a satellite array, was something we've never seen before, except of a crop circle 30 years prior, which was identical to the symbol they put in that binary system. And triple helix for their DNA strand, showing that they were silicone-based. On top of that, we put a little stick figure of what we looked like. They put a little stick figure of what they looked like. And they looked like the Greys. Big, long, elongated heads with a sharp, pointy chin, big eyes, all that stuff. On top of that, so the way we got that information was in a circular pattern in a crop circle, which was binary. That gave us all that. On top of that, I think it was another 2 weeks later, we had another crop circle that was rectangular. That was exactly how our binary was processed to them on the crop circle. So when you process their binary, you see everything I just told you. But on the crop circle, it was already printed out. You didn't even need the binary. It showed you exactly what it looked like.
Wow.
And one of the planets in their system wasn't a planet. So they had a specific icon for each planet. So they inhabited apparently the third and fourth. Again, can't confirm or deny. The third and fourth planet in that system. But the fourth planet looked like it was man-made. Almost like have you ever heard of Dyson sphere?
Yes.
Almost looked like that. So they inhabited 2 parts of the system, but it looked like one was not man-made, obviously, but artificially made. It was very, very, very cool rabbit hole to go down, and one that's very, very close to as much as I can tell you.
We're going to have you back and dig into so much more of this stuff, but I want to thank you very much. Brother Eric Mattson Jr., thank you so much for being here,
Awesome.
for drinking some Old Elk bourbon with us and smoking
this is
some
delicious.
some Drew Estate cigars with us.
Cigar was great.
Tonight we, I think for the most part, myself and you smoked the Underground Shades. What were you smoking today?
I had the adoba.
The adobo, and I didn't get to my Nica
It
Rustica,
was the
but
Nica Rustica adoba, technically. Was
Yes,
also
absolutely.
Drew Estate. I guess that was the theme for the evening.
Drew Estate and Old Elk bourbon, absolutely.
We were
So,
too captivated.
so thank you for coming on, Brothers of the Arcana,
It's
and
my pleasure and honor by far.
on behalf of myself, Alex Aldea, and
And this other guy
this
over
other
here,
guy, Dave Ferrigno. Thank you.
Genuinely appreciate you coming out and
Absolutely.
kicking off our inaugural episode. And obviously, you know, there's a lot more to come. And
Absolutely.
It's going to be incredible.
There's so
Really
much
look
more I
forward
want to
to
tell
the
too. So, but I can't wait to hear your guys' podcast. This is great. Great setting.
This is
great
exactly
guys.
it.
Yeah, this is beautiful.
Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate everything.
Love you, brother. You guys
Love you
are
too.
great. Anytime, man. Anytime. This was amazing.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the hospitality. Thank you for the opportunity to tell my story. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Means a lot.
Thank you for your time.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah.
And good night, all.